All right, so let's go get started, and we're going to insert our first component. So if I go up here to insert component, if you don't have this box that automatically pops up, what will happen is we can hit this browse button and it will also take you um, to basically a file explorer where you can find the part that we want to insert. And so I want to come down here and I'm going to insert the yoke male, and I'm going to click open. And what that's going to do, it's going to bring that part in and I can move it anywhere I want. And so for right now, we're just going to put it about here, and I'm going to right click, and that's going to insert it into my assembly. So if we look under here, now we have a bracket, and that's our fixed part. And then we have our yoke male. And if we look here, we have this minus symbol, which means it's underdefined. We have the name, and then this is the first instance, meaning there's only one here. If I click on this, it highlights, it changes color of that, and that helps in a more complex assembly of me being able to identify where that part is. It also puts this gnomon, which is what this is called, and it allows me to rotate this part in different directions. All right, let's look at getting this part in here now. So a couple things first. If I come over here and I click and hold my left mouse button down on the part, I can drag it and move it anywhere I want. If I click and hold my right mouse button down, I can rotate it about that point. And again, I'm moving my mouse way over, but it's just going to rotate. It's not going to move with it. The other way that we can move our view is if I come down here on our triad or our gnomon, and if I click on one of these axes, like this x-axis, it automatically brings me to a certain view. Now I can come in here and I can zoom to fit, or I can click on the Z. And again, I have to zoom out to get that, probably just because I have it zoomed in so much. But so that's a quick way that we can change our viewpoint. Okay, so we've seen how to move these by dragging, but that obviously is not accurate enough or precise enough to get these two lined up where we want. So how we're going to do that is we're going to use a command called mate or insert mate. And basically this is going to be a relationship between two different parts, and we're basically, by mating them, we're telling them how we want them to align together. And we can use different objects of each part to align these parts together. We can use faces, planes, edges, vertices, sketch lines and points, and axes and origins. And so probably the two most common mate commands that we're going to use are going to be concentric, which means two things share the same center axis. Like if you picture two or like a wheel and an axle, they're two separate components, but they line up together and they both share the same center axis. And then coincident. And when two pieces or two parts are coincident, it means that they share the same point or the same plane. All right, let's jump back to the book on page 450 for a second, then we'll align those two parts. If we look at this, the bottom of this cone and the top of this rectangle have been selected, and we have a choice that we want to align where it's blue, this selected face with this selected face, and we can either align it or anti-align it, which is the opposite. And so if we look at this first one, this coincident, if they're aligned, it means that both faces are facing the same way and they're on the same plane. Anti-aligned, they're on the same plane, but they're facing in the opposite direction. Same with parallel. faces are in the same direction, they're parallel to one another, they're not on the same plane. Same with anti-aligned. And we can go through each one here, and you can see that with these constraints here, after we've selected our mating surfaces, it gives us a lot more control over the part and how we're going to align it. And so here's concentric. We've selected the outside of the cylinder with this radius. And so for them to share the same center axis, you can see that now that cylinder is aligned with that arc, or that half a hole. Anti-aligned is the opposite direction. Tangent means these two surfaces are going to touch. So aligned, anti-aligned. Again, we have center to center distances. We have other distances that we can control the part and how we mate. And now here, this section over on page 452 just shows different surfaces, different types of geometry that we can use to create different types of mates. And so here they're using two planes. Here they're using surfaces or lines, right? So they've got a sketch line here, and then they're selecting the inside of this tube, and now they've aligned it to that sketch line. Axes, points. So again, the book gives some really good examples, and here's again a concentric mate with a circular cylinder with that hole. And again, that's so we can fit that pin through the hole. So let's jump back to the assembly. We're going to mate these two parts, and so if I come up here to my mate command, I'm going to click that. It's going to open another dialog box, and it wants us to select what two surfaces do we want to pick, or what 2 pieces of geometry do we want to pick to align. And we're going to start with this cylinder, this small cylinder on this yoke, as one, and then we're going to pick the inside of this hole as another one. And so it's going to try to pick something for us. And in this case, it's correct. It picked concentric because it saw the two cylinders, or the cylinder in the hole, and there are limited options for that. And so it went to the first one that it thought was correct. And in this case, it is. And so I've also got this heads up toolbar here that shows me that concentric was picked. And so I could change that if I wanted to. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And now we can see that this is located, or I should say mated, within that part. So we've assembled those two pieces. And now, so it thinks I want to do another part. I'm going to X out of here, and just to show you. So we have these two parts, but now I have a mate folder. And if I open this up, I've got my first mate in there, and it shows me the two parents of that concentric mate are that bracket and that yoke. So it helps us do some housekeeping and keep track of our assembly. Now, because these two parts are mated concentrically, I can still move this. I can rotate it up and down vertically, but I cannot drag this side to side. I can only rotate it. And so what we need to do now is constrain it vertically. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add another mate. And if I select the underside of this, my part becomes transparent. And the reason for that is because if I've got a really complex assembly going, and I'm on my 300th part, and I might not be able to rotate the part to where I want to get to it, what that does by turning it transparent is now I can kind of hover on this, and I can select my mating part through here. And so that's what it did. The smart mate part of it, select coincident, which means the top part of that yoke and the bottom surface of that bracket share the same plane, which they do. And so we're going to click OK. And now when we look at it, each time that we select a mate, we're removing degrees of freedom. We're removing the ways that these parts can move. And so if I click on here and I hold my left mouse key down, I'm able to rotate it, and that's all I'm able to do. I can't move it side to side. I can't move it up and down because now we've mated it. We've restricted its movement in two different ways. All right. So now when I red X'd out of the mate because I didn't want to create another one, it's still underdefined because I can still move it in this way, which we may want to leave it like that. That's underdefined in the assembly. It also shows my new mate here under my mates folder. And if I click on one of these parts, what it does is called breadcrumbs. And what it does is it gives me a sequence. I can look, and each step along the way, each hierarchy, it's going to show me what I did. And so I've got the assembly. That part that I highlighted was the yoke. And up above, it's got a concentric and a coincident mate. It's a solid body, base extrude, sketch 1. And so again, I don't use this very often, but if you've got a really complicated assembly, it allows you to click on a part and just get a little bit of information about it. So go ahead and save this. We're going to end this video here because we're going to keep building on this. So make sure that you don't delete this. Otherwise, you're going to have to start over from scratch.